Good morning, everybody. It is the first Wednesday of October, October 6th, and we have some special guests on today. Hello, good morning, Christian. How are you?
As you can tell, I'm trying to, I don't know what I was doing there. There was a little bit of dance with that ranchero music. So yeah, how are you, Jenny? Good morning. How's Charlotte?
It seems to be a little cloudy. It's a little darker in my little broadcast room, aka my den and living room and kitchen area. The head of the Jenny Studios here.
Yeah.
But we have two fabulous special guests this morning. So we're going to do things a little different. One, we are, just as a FYI, we are going to skip the in the news part. So if you are tuning in for that part, but we're going to substitute by having two and possibly three special guests. We have a guest from the SBA and the LGBT Carolinas Chamber, and I'm going to introduce them here shortly. But Christian, how is it in Texas?
Oh, wonderful. You know, I'm still at the Ritz-Carlton, aka my cousin's house. So, you know, as you can tell here, and it's been, you know, we're getting clouds as well. Welcome everyone to Coffee Pan Dulce. As Jenny said, I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Jenny-Jaymes Gunn, Mama Ruth, Stephen DeFiore, and Barb Bacon. Barb will not be joining us today, and as you can tell, Mama Ruth is on a hiatus. She's got some great things going on, and Stephen DeFiore, our libertarian, is not with us currently as well. But it's going great. Today is October the 6th, the first Wednesday of October. It's already Halloween month. Wow, it's incredible. Summer's over. We're technically in fall. Today's topic is, will post-COVID-19 equal the roaring 20s? As Jenny said, we are not going to do current events today, which, darn it. There's so much going on in Texas. Or as we call it, the West Afghanistan? Is that what we've decided to call it?
That's next week's show.
That's right. So as we always do on Coffee and Pan Dulce, let's salute to our neighbors if you're drinking coffee, or Rafael Prieto's vodka in the morning, whatever you drink. And then also, water. We want to thank our Pan Dulce sponsor and supplier, Manolo's Bakery. This is actually still the concha that I brought from Charlotte. It's been in the refrigerator, so it's still good. And then, of course, I had to visit one of the many bakeries here in Fort Worth, Texas. Got all kinds of, I've been eating Mexican food all week long. So with that said, Jenny, take over. How do you want to do this?
Well, first of all, I want to have each of the guests introduce themselves and basically what their organization does. We'll start with Mike and the SBA. If you would introduce yourself, your role with your organization, and in a nutshell, what the SBA actually does.
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. And thanks so much for having me on, Christian and Jenny, and good morning to you, Chad. So the SBA is a U.S. government agency, and we were formed over 60 years ago to help folks start, develop, and succeed in business. So we're not really a regulatory agency. We're more of a service providing body. And we provide services to small businesses through our financing programs, through counseling and training programs, and through programs that can help folks tap into the very lucrative federal contracting marketplace. I have a staff of about 12 of us helping the state of North Carolina. Almost all of us are based in the district office in Charlotte, and we have one-person satellite offices in Asheville, Raleigh, and Wilmington. And we've got an entire ecosystem of small business technical assistance providers that can help folks, whether they're looking to start a business or even exit a business. And those are the Small Business and Technology Development Center, SBTDC. We've got 10 chapters of SCORE, which are volunteer mentors. We've got 5 women's business centers across the state. And we've got the one Veterans Business Outreach Center to help our veterans population. So that in brief is what we do. And it's great to be here again.
Thank you, Mike. And Chad, if you could introduce yourself and your organization as well.
Sure. My name is Chad Turner. I'm the president and chief executive officer for the Carolinas LGBT Chamber of Commerce, formerly known as the Charlotte LGBT Chamber. We regionalized on May 6th of this year to encompass all 50 counties, Western North Carolina and most of South Carolina. We currently have membership and teams in Myrtle Beach, Charleston, Columbia, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, Asheville, and the Charlotte region, which also encompasses Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Statesville, Gastonia, and Concord. We're a 30-year-old organization that focuses on economic empowerment for the LGBT small business community, professionals, as well as ally businesses as well. Currently, we stand at almost 500 members with over 40 corporate partners and 11 strategic partners across the two-state region.
Well, in the premise of the show, when Christian and I were talking about developing a show that was more business focused, but also, quite frankly, the parallels between this Roaring 20s and the Roaring 20s of the 1920s, we in both situations, we were coming out of the Spanish flu pandemic when the Roaring 20s began back then. We were coming out of World War I. There was a lot of economic and changes, a lot of manufacturing changes. Our economy was deeply changing. Not too much different than what we're going through right now. We're going through a pandemic. We just ended a 20-year war in Afghanistan and many other things. And so we are definitely seeing a technological pivot. And so I'm assuming with both your organizations have had to pivot both for the pandemic and for technology. The fact that we're doing this in a Zoom instead of the coffee studio like we did 2 years ago. So having said that, what kind of technology pivots have the SBA and the chamber had to change in their day-to-day operations? How have y'all pivoted in this pandemic?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and go first. Yeah, the SBA, we continue to work remotely. We've been working remotely since March 20th. So everybody's teleworking from home. Everybody brought their computers with them from the offices. We brought a good number of our monitors, keyboards, that sort of thing. And we've been set up since about March of last year to do all of our work remotely. We've made heavy use of some of the video applications like we're using now. And so almost all of our outreach has been done virtually. We continue to man the phones, the emails, and that sort of thing. But I think one of the terrific blessings of working remotely is the convenience that we can log on as early as we want and log off as late as we need. So that means that your SBA throughout the state of North Carolina has really been putting in the hours because we haven't had to deal with commute time, that sort of thing. So the very big plus in working remotely is our levels of efficiency and effectiveness have really gone through the roof. We've been able to manage the call volume and the email volume, which has become a bear on most days, but we've been able to manage it very well. So by virtue of being forced to work remotely, we've also had some blessings, and I think we've been much better, much more effective in handling the volume of inquiries than we would have if everybody had to power off at night and go home, unless of course they brought their laptops with them. So that would be the big change that we've seen.
And for the chamber specifically, because it's a business group, but it's also very social. So what I found interesting, and Chad, you can expand on this, is how I got introduced to the chamber is I started going to the breakfasts, the once a month breakfast meetings. And so how has a very antisocial pandemic affected y'all's social side of your business networking? How did you guys pivot, and how are you coming out of the pandemic? How are you handling that?
So the chamber took on an interesting role during the pandemic because we could no longer function in the height of the pandemic. We couldn't function like we normally do in an event space. So we ended up moving everything to virtual. We had about 26 virtual sessions through the first year of the pandemic, first 12 months. And we also created a call center for small businesses to be able to call into here in Charlotte and the region and access website information. We did a repository and created a website called supportclt.com, and all of the updated grant, loan, application information down to unemployment, how to access certain benefits, what was going on in the city, what the hospitals were saying. All of that was updated on a daily basis. And so we became sort of a hub that was virtual for people to be able to get a hold of a live person because they were unable to get a hold of live people on the city and state level. Unemployment was unreachable. It was just a mess. And so we just deployed our connections and we did the workarounds and we started connecting people. And so we assisted in that first 12 months, we assisted over 9,500 small businesses under 50 employees in accessing this information. And of that, around 3,300 of those small businesses were assisted in accessing almost $22 million worth of support. And we distributed almost 200,000 pieces of protective equipment to these small business owners to assist them in staying open and not bear the burden of having to buy the sanitizer and the masks and things of that nature. So our engagement actually rose, whereas most chambers lost membership during the pandemic. Our engagement rose because we were making weekly calls to our members, asking them how they were doing. Are you still open? What do you need? Were you able to access this? We were doing touch points and ensuring that we were connecting, because the biggest thing that hurt organizations like the Chamber during the pandemic is the loss of interaction, human interaction and social, in a social context. And so while all of our programming was online, we were making that voice to ear connection with all of our members and ensuring that they were accessing the programs that were available. And we assisted the city in writing their CARES Act program called Access to Capital, which gave small businesses under 25 employees $10,000 and $25,000 in grant form.
And
Hey, Jenny,
also too, I wanted to make sure
Jenny, I'm sorry, I just want to jump in, and because I completely forgot to say, since Manolo has shown up, Manolo's Bakery on Central Avenue. Please support your Black and brown businesses and all small businesses during our global pandemic. Anyone who watches this show knows that's the line I always say after I show you Manolo's Bakery. So I'm sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
No, I was going to actually introduce Manolo since he popped in. And make sure that he could not only introduce himself, but introduce his brand and his bakery. And if you've never tried their pastries, you're missing out. Their pastries and their tamales are world-class. And we're proud to, yeah, I mean, we won't talk about the bread, but because it's just too amazing. It is, well, I'm not gonna even say what it is. It's addictive, but it is a fabulously locally owned business made by immigrant hands. And we're so proud to have a show affiliation. And Manolo actually exists. He's a real person. I'm sure anybody that's watched the show over the years goes, is there really a Manolo? And I go, yes, there actually is, but he's a hardworking man. But Manolo, if you could introduce yourself and talk about your business just a little bit and take it away.
Thank you so much for having me here. You guys brought me a smile, like we sharing your hearts with me. As you know, Manolo's Bakery previously was Las Delicias Bakery. We are the first Latino bakery in North Carolina. We have been for 25 years. 25 years this coming April. So as an immigrant, I'm very involved with our community. I met Christian some years ago when we were very active, driving to Washington, D.C., fighting for immigrant rights, human rights, minorities' rights, and everything that comes from our hearts and souls. So nice to see you, Michael. You haven't told them that an SBA graduated emerging leaders.
Yep.
So we met a few years ago, and I had a wonderful training with SBA. A program that is called Emerging Leaders with Brenda Anderson, my mentor, my coach, a very important person in my life. And you know, the LGBT community is part of Manolo's Bakery, and always has been with you guys. And you always are a very important part of my bakery. So happy to be here. So happy to support you. Forever I'm gonna support you, because we need more people like all of you. Then you guys talk and act and feel and are part of the community, original, no fake. And I'm glad to be with all of you. thank you, Dan. It took so long for me to talk about my business and myself.
Well, that's
But one of the important things, and a lot of people forget, we were built on immigrant businesses in this country. As a granddaughter on my dad's side of immigrants, on that side of the family, I'm only a second generation American. My dad was the first generation born on American soil. The immigrant community, the new arrivals, is near and dear to my heart and Christian's heart. And we're very proud to stand with that community. We're very proud to stand with businesses like Manolo's. And, people kind of forget, after all the uproar and craziness that have talked about the last few years, that's what America should look like. That's what we should think of when we talk about America, is chambers of commerce, SBA programs, immigrant-owned businesses, hardworking individuals that make our economy survive pandemics, and changes and war and all that. And I did want to speak to veterans issues as well. As the daughter and granddaughter of American vets, my maternal grandfather and my dad both served in World War II and in Vietnam. I heard you mention, Mike, that SBA does have a veterans program. Could you speak to that, considering we've come out of 20 years worth of war, with Afghanistan ending this year? What do you guys do for veterans, and how does that program look like?
Yeah, the SBA does have an Office of Veterans Business Development devoted to helping veterans, and in some cases their spouses, to help start, develop, and succeed their businesses. One of the very active programs we have is called Boots to Business, and this is for transitioning service members. We've got Boots to Business going on 5 of our military installations here in North Carolina, and it's sort of like a soup to nuts kind of how to get started in business, making use of SBA programs, how to compose a business plan, and that sort of thing. So it helps folks transitioning out of the service, looking for entrepreneurship as a viable life mission. So we've had that for about 5 or 6 years now. That will be the primary thing that we have for our veterans. We do have a very active success story program where we try to focus on minorities, women, LGBTQ folks, and also our veterans population, because in our view, we believe that representation matters. And particularly in advancing, profiling some of our successes, we think that that's a good way to showcase how our programs work in real life, in terms of the individual successes that we profile. There have been some benefits for veterans in terms of like reduced loan guarantee fees for our SBA loans and that sort of thing. And then finally, on the government contracting side, soon enough, when we transition fully the Veteran Certified Small Business Program from VA, parts of that to SBA, we'll be able to administer the certification program for veteran-owned small businesses to help them tap into federal contracting opportunities, which are huge. The federal government spends about $700 billion on all kinds of goods and services, and we can enable veterans as well as minority and other firms tap into that very lucrative contracting marketplace.
And Chad, what kind of mentorship programs or things do y'all offer with the chamber, and especially in light of COVID? How does that look like now, as far as we're trying to pivot out of COVID? What kind of things are y'all trying to prep people for, or business owners for, and what kind of directions do you see the chamber going in light of the expansion as well?
I think one of the biggest obstacles that small businesses met during the height of the pandemic, but also now, is access to the available paperwork and the available items needed to get federal and state grants or loans during the pandemic. Let me give you an example. There are roughly 42,000 small businesses under 50 employees in the Charlotte metro region. Of those businesses, around 42% are women, LGBT, Black and brown owned. And that particular segment of that were less likely to be able to access a balance sheet, a P&L, put their hands on information. We're talking about small businesses that may have 5 landscapers who maybe balances their checkbook when payroll is done every 2 or 3 weeks. And we're talking about the 5-chair barbershop or the small baker that bakes cakes out of the back of their house. And so these are individuals that were caught off guard through the mandates of closure or reduction, and they weren't able to readily put their hands on stuff. And by the time they got in line with what they needed, the funds were starting to dole out real quick, and they didn't have as much access. And not to mention, the banks were difficult to deal with at times, because some of these small businesses, and I would say through our research, because we did a lot of research for the city council and the county commission to get some raw numbers, through our research, we found out that a lot of them are not banking traditionally. And so we had to figure out how to maneuver that. And what we've done is we've worked with SBA and the North Carolina Golden Leaf Fund, and also various organizations throughout the region, to figure out how we can better prepare these individuals to know how to go online and create a P&L, to know how to instruct their staff on how to, do balance sheets, and how to print a payroll report if you're going for a particular type of grant that requires you to justify the number of employees you have. And so I think readiness is one of the things that we have to do now, because we don't know when the next pandemic or natural disaster is going to happen. And then the second thing that we need to do is we need to understand, as a governmental entity, whether it's the federal government, state government, or local government, before you pull the button or pull the lever to close things and mandate those closures, have a plan in place to undergird the individuals that are going to be affected by no fault of their own. It's one thing if you screw up and you mess your business up and something happens and you were at fault, but it's another thing to be told by the government that you have to close due to the pandemic, and you don't have a backup plan, or you don't have anything no support from the government. Because at first, and I know Michael can speak to this probably, at first, for the first 2 or 3 months, we didn't know what the heck was going on or what we were going to do. It was a free-for-all, because we had to wait on elected officials to decide how to shift money and move things around. And so our current infrastructure didn't allow for us to help these individuals. And so grassroots groups had to come in and really just push hard and campaign and advocate to make sure that these small businesses like Manolo's would be supported during the pandemic and beyond. Because guess what? If the pandemic ends tomorrow, these small businesses are still going to go through a 12 to 18 month recovery period, because of the amount of business that they lost, the fact that there's a shortage in staff, and the fact that there is now a supply chain shortage and you can't get certain products, or certain products have become extremely expensive.
Hey, Chad, sorry to interrupt you, because I know Jenny has a question from Manolo, but I have just a quick question. One of the things that you learned very, very quickly in Charlotte, and we are in the Charlotte region, and we have viewers all around the country, but they've gone through this issue as well. We're ground zero for so many things with social justice, whether it's, a lot of things we have. But one of the things I constantly hear from our Black and Brown communities is, how do we take part of the generational wealth that other families have been a part of in the Charlotte region? And what I noticed is, and because I think Michael, or maybe it was you, Chad, said something about certifications. I didn't really understand how important that was, to be certified in LGBTQ or a woman business, or a Latinx business, or Hispanic business, right? How important that is. And the reason is, if you grew up in Texas, in Dallas area, Ross Perot made almost all of his money from contracts with the government. That's really, so anytime someone says, I'm self-made, you're self-made because the taxpayers bought your product for so many years.
Right.
So how do we get, with the certification, why that's so important, how do we get Black and Brown businesses, or especially Latinx businesses, to become certified, or LGBT, and why that is so important? I don't know who wants to touch that.
Chris,
Sure.
Thank you, Chad. Yeah, I guess because I'm the small business owner here.
Yes, exactly. I'm sorry.
My personal point of view about this. You guys are right. It's so important, but and you have been talking a little bit about what it means to be a small business owner. But let me tell you, and I keep saying this everywhere, the small restaurant that is owned by a family, you know, the restaurant owner is the guy who wakes up very early in the morning, go and buy the groceries, then comes to cook, then comes to serve, then comes to clean, and then has to close at night. So there is no time for us, for small business owners, to go through all these applications, to go through all these documents and go through all this bureaucracy. And I'm so glad that you guys have realized that it's so important for us to get help. I'm so lucky that I've been able to reach a point in my life and my business that I have people that can help me with doing all that stuff. But a restaurant or a bakery or a small business that employ 5 people, trust me, the business owner, he cannot do that. So I'm lucky to do some businesses with the city because I've been able to get certified. But there is a lot of businesses that they don't even know what to do. And I used to be part of the small business advisory committee of the city. I told them, and I keep saying that, and I say everywhere, you guys always expecting for the small business owner to come to the main building, to the government building, to the main office and look for help. We don't have time to go and find a parking spot in downtown and go to a building that we don't even know how to get in. Then it's gonna be so intimidating that you feel like you are getting in an airport or going to a facility of ICE, you know. So it's so important for the organizations to go to the businesses. It's not because we are arrogant, it's because we don't have time. Many times we have fear. Many times we don't even speak the language. We don't even know the system. But we are, by the end, the one who are producing the taxes, the one who are creating the business and paying Roy Cooper's salary. So, because that's what I pay for my bakery taxes. So every month.
Well said, Manolo.
How do you get certified, and
Yeah.
what is the process? You know, I know Chad talks about it a lot at chamber meetings, and there is a value to getting certified, you know, with the city or with the chamber. So could y'all both, Mike and Chad, could y'all both speak to certification and what the value is and how y'all help that process?
Yeah. Let me let Chad go, and then I'll talk about certifications and then circle back to some of the things that both Manolo and Chad raised. So Chad, take it away.
Sure. So there is a myriad of certifications that are offered. Most of them are national certifications. So obviously we're the LGBT chamber, so we do focus on the LGBT business enterprise certification through the national chamber. And then there are women certifications through WeBank and other organizations. And then there are minority business MBE certifications. And I would say Manolo is absolutely correct. And one of the obstacles that we face is most small business owners, especially under 5 employees, don't have the time, nor do they have the guidance to be able to navigate those certification processes. And so one of the things that we did as a chamber 2 years ago was we funded and created a certification, a supplier diversity committee. And that committee is a committee of 5 individuals that assist all of our small business owners and will help them get their documentation uploaded, walk through the system, understand, this is a word that I'm gonna throw out there and I'm sure Michael may say it later on, get their NAICS codes together and make sure that they understand what a NAICS code is and they can be, you know, aligned with the industry and the product and the service that they offer. I will say my husband is a minority small business owner and he has an employee or a staff, full-time staff under 5 employees. And once he got certified as an LGBT business enterprise and also an MBE, because he's also a Black business owner, the pandemic did not destroy his business because he was able to pivot to those contracts. and there were governmental contracts that he could tap into that, you know, certain entities still needed to be fed. He's a caterer, so certain, you know, food service for certain entities, as food service for schools, food service for state programs. And so I will say Manolo is correct that we need to be more of a technical assistance to our small business owners and offering that technical assistance and maybe picking up the grunt work of that. And then on the flip side of things, we also need to teach them how to access contracting and what is an RFP? How do you do an RFP? And how do you find the contracts with the county, the city, the state? Because there is a contracting hub with the county, there's a contracting hub with the city, there's one with the state, there's one with Wells Fargo, there's one with PGA, there's one with, it's all over the place. And so where do you fit in, and how do you get access to that? And there are tools, and I'll pivot, I mean, I'll pitch this over to Michael now. This will be my setup. There are a lot of tools through the SBA to assist you. And there's also individuals in the SBA, as well as your local chambers, to be sure that the small business owner is not bearing the brunt or the burden of the paperwork and just the day-to-day activity that needs to go on to get that certification processed.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, you know, in terms of federal contracting certifications and that sort of thing, doing business with the federal government is not something to be entered into lightly. You kind of really need to prepare yourself to be able to speak an entire new vocabulary of, you know, contracting terms, to say nothing of, you know, really the bureaucracy, setting up a SAM profile, getting a DUNS number, all of the things, the infrastructure that you need to do in order to get ready to contract, to do contracting with the government. And the other thing to keep in mind is getting a certification, any of these certifications, doesn't automatically mean that money is going to be raining down from the sky for you. It's, as we like to say in our line of work, getting a certification is a license to hunt. It doesn't mean that somebody's going to show up here at your doorstep with, you know, a deer or something like that, but it's a license for you all to hunt. As a participant in federal contracting, it really is up to you to seek out opportunities and take advantage of all of these resources that can help you. The SBTDC, which you can find at sbtdc.org, is an SBA program, and they actually have a division devoted to helping small businesses tap contracts at the state and federal levels. So at both levels, they can help you kind of navigate the bureaucracy of trying to get federal contracting work. And there's lots of different certifications. Probably the Cadillac of our programs is called the SBA 8A certification program, where socially and economically disadvantaged individuals can get certification by the SBA. And we can actually serve as the prime contractor for all of these other federal agencies to award contracts to these 8A certified firms. So we've had many successes, some of whom Manolo has met in our SBA Emerging Leaders program. So federal contracting, not to be entered into lightly, and we can kind of help you navigate that. SBA.gov/NC to visit us, or to kind of find out a little bit more about all the programs that I'm talking about. I do want to pivot to some of the things that were mentioned in terms of what we as North Carolinians experienced when the pandemic started to hit, and some of the things that we saw in terms of trying to get access to capital out there. So obviously, you know, PPP, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, these were kind of once in a lifetime solutions to, you know, and I hate using this word because it's been used to death, to address unprecedented situations. I mean, we had not faced anything like this, and consequently, Congress approved hundreds of billions of dollars to help small businesses weather the storm. And the way to get the money out there as quickly as possible, one of the primary means was through the PPP program. Basically, we were looking at avenues, channels to get this money as quickly as possible, because the federal government can't do it themselves. But we did know that we have an entire existing network of banks, credit unions, other kinds of lenders that could get the money out as quickly as possible. So we connected with them. We connected with all of these fintech companies that had never done SBA lending, because we know that they too can get the money out very quickly. But the point of this whole exercise was to get the money as quickly as possible. And quite frankly, what SBA ended up doing is we ended up building the plane as we were flying it. We were putting together the rules and regulations as a lot of our small businesses were raising their hands and saying, SBA, you need to change this because this doesn't work for us. As a consequence, we came out with constant changes to the regulations. But I think, in hindsight, getting the money out as quickly as possible and just making up the rules as we go along, I think that is infinitely preferable than sitting down, taking our time, putting together the SOPs, convening focus groups. By then, we would have lost millions of small businesses and all the jobs going along with it. So this was by no means, this was a far from perfect program, but I think our approach in getting the money out as quick as we can was the right approach. Now, to be sure, and I'll try to wrap this up really quickly, to be sure what PPP in particular exposed was a lot of shortcomings in terms of who has access to capital and who does not. Because I'll tell you what we've discovered is that not everybody has accounts with banks. Not everybody has accounts with credit unions. And and when I say not everybody, I mean in particular our underserved communities. These are folks who don't necessarily keep bank accounts and for whatever reason may not have as ready access to banks as other folks do. And so we reached out to community financial institutions, those whose mission is to serve minorities, women, etc. And we made sure to get them on board. And we even gave them preference periods to say, only you can apply during this period because we needed to get that money out as soon as we could. And we did see the fruits of our labors by seeing a real strong uptick in the percentage of PPP loans to African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans, women, veterans, etc. So we did see the results of that as a result, but of course we don't know what we don't know. And only when we get the complaints that, hey, SBA, we don't necessarily have bank accounts, we need to figure ways out. We don't know until people come to us and tell us that these things are real and exist, until we can kind of fashion solutions to them.
Got a couple questions. Actually, I wanted to aim it at Manolo. A couple things. Is there one single thing that you did when the pandemic hit that helped your business survive? Because so many restaurants and so many bakeries went away during the last 18 months. And two, what are you looking forward to as COVID goes away? Is there something you're looking forward to or to expand to as we come out of this pandemic?
Look, there's a few things that very important to have in this conversation. In one day, almost 70% of all my business went down. We cook for schools, we do catering, we make wedding cakes, a graduation cakes, and everything was shut down. So that was very scary, but we moved very, very fast. I sat with my team, and in one way we became with 25 ideas. And a lot of those ideas work very well. And also take chance. I always take chance of these opportunities for share my own philosophy of business, because it works so well, is give back to community. All these blessings through all these years of giving to the community, it was the time when community gave us back. So I deliver, people hire me, hey, bring me a cake to my house. And by the way, there is $20 for the cake and $200 for helping you with the payroll and your business. It was too much affection and love from the community to us, because we have been given to the community through the years, then they give us back. It was an army of people around the nation helping us with the cake project. Because when I started receiving all this, I said, you know what? Every single family in North Carolina, here at Mecklenburg County, who has a kid that has a birthday and cannot afford a cake, has a free cake. We gave away 3,000 cakes.
Wow.
And through the pandemic. And many of you were blessings to us. So that is my own philosophy. Is something that I want for more people to follow, because it works so well. Things to look, and now, Michael, you're right, man. You know that SBA, I'm a huge fan of them, and I even got in a fight the other day because I was defending SBA. this guy came and said, oh man, there's so many things that are the wrong way, SBA. I want for you to be part of this thing. I'm sorry, man. You know, I'm not that guy. Because like any other organization, like any other business, we always find things to improve. And when we just find that there's a mistake, it's the only way that we can make a change.
Sure.
Like when I get a feedback in Google, a bad review and Google reviews from my business, man, thank you, it hurts us a lot, but you are giving a chance to improve. But let me tell you something, Dan, it's so hard to find a way to communicate with federal identities. Charlotte, Mecklenburg Airport, our airport, they receive a lot of money from federal government, and they're obligated to do at least 15 to 20% with small businesses. If you don't get 15% of your business for a small, you're not getting federal money. Well, I've been trying to do airport with the airport 3 years. I've been trying to do business with them for 3 years. Every 6 months, they shut the door to me. Something new happened and they close the door to me. I tried to do business with the Panthers. Oh, you are too small for us. Now I'm trying to do business with David Tepper. Says you are gonna be able to sell in our soccer games. They shut the door to us. So sometimes for us, we are too small for big businesses. Sometimes I don't know if it's always the same people, the one who get the contracts with these organizations. But as a small business that I am, then I go through to deal with all those things every single day. But I'm very outspoken, and you guys know me, and share you the good and the bad things and the ugly as well. You know, we need to have more diversity at the airport. We need to have more diversity with the Panthers. We need to have more diversity with soccer. We are not getting it. You don't give me the business to me, but give it to somebody else, okay? But and it's true. It's hard to do the business with federal level, but I'm open to do it. I bring the people. I can get the people to do the business with them. Just give me the chance. But
hey, Manolo, I know Jenny has something to say, but you know, you hit the nail right on the head. There's so many people, regardless of what political party you belong to. I happen to be a Democratic Libertarian. We have other people on the show in the past who are different political groups, but we all say we support small businesses. We all say we support the little man. But when it comes to those kind of contracts or those kind of things, we don't push hard enough for them at the cities, county, and federal level, state level. And so, you know, we have one party who says they're here for the small business, but then they don't allow us to say at the airport, you must be 50% small business, 50% this, because they don't like those quotas, so to speak. But unfortunately, the way it's stacked, you can't unless you, I don't know,
just give you an example. It's also mentality and education, because there is a lot of meetings here in our government building, and they do catering with for a breakfast with the city government. They bring Dunkin' Donuts, man. And I was part of that meeting. I was part of the board. I said, that's insulting, man. And we are representing the small businesses. You invite me to a meeting for small businesses, and you are serving breakfast for big corporations. You know, they didn't even think about it. You know, it's something about their mentality. But do that. But we are not here to divide. We are here to deal together. You know, so.
But I think
my point of view.
No, I think Manolo brings up some very important points that buying local, which is one of the things that we talk about on the show when we talk about Manolo, but also our plug is saying buy from Black and brown businesses, that we encourage immigrant businesses, that we encourage that. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the excitement or the business of the day, and we just accidentally, I think a lot of it isn't intentionality. I think a lot of it is we all have an agenda in our mind, and we get going full speed, and we forget to help our neighbor. We forget, we set up a business meeting and go, I'll just swing by Dunkin' instead of swinging by Manolo's. And that's a shame. You know, we should be more intentional about a lot of things. That even came up in the Mecklenburg meeting last night on talking about intentionality and intersectionality. And but I think Manolo brought up some points that maybe you or Chad can speak to about contracts with the Panthers or the airport or anything like that. How does a small business break into places like that? Do you have any advice on getting those types of contracts that probably do pay pretty well?
Yeah, I'll let Chad go first, perhaps.
Sure. I think there's three things. There's three things that we always tell a small business when they're looking to contract with a large corporation, like the Panthers, the PGA, or, you know, even if it's with the city of Charlotte. Number one is scalability. Being able to scale what they're asking you to do. Number two is a lot of times these large organizations like the airport or like the Panthers or the Hornets may pay on a 90-day net, or they may pay on a 60-day net, or they may pay on a 30-day net. Is the small business able to float the cash to cover what's being done through that? And then the third thing is we have a huge problem in our system that there's a lot of elbows getting greased, and that, you know, it's about who you know in the system, and that's unfair. That's unfortunate, because a lot of times it doesn't reach the businesses that we're looking to reach. We are working very hard through different committees and things of that nature to ensure that we're focusing on businesses in the corridors that are affected. Manolo's is in a corridor, and understanding that those first two things that I listed are things that are fixable. Those are things that you work with a small business to get them to the point of being able to do those things. The last instance is it's who you elect, and it's who you put in office, and it's who you are allowing to be hired by the government entity, and it's navigating that program. And so I too understand the airport disgruntled issue, because my husband has also had the door slammed in his face from the airport. He's a Black-owned business, and I understand that the airport is the crown jewel of contracting in the city of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. I also understand that we don't have people in place in certain areas in contracting that understand intentionality. And you know, we get government employees, and Michael, no offense to government employees, we get government employees that become the proverbial DMV employee, where they're just processing paperwork, and they're just doing their day-to-day, and they're there every day, and they may be there for 20 years, and they've lost touch with what's actually happening on the ground to understand why that intentionality is very important. And if you don't have a council member or a commissioner or a representative or a senator that is making that their push, then they're just going to keep doing the status quo, and we won't have any results of businesses within the corridors being touched, and we'll still be doing the same old and getting what we've always got, because we're doing what we've always done.
Hey, Chad, quick question. Jenny, I'm sorry, because I know we only got 10 more minutes left, but Chad, what you said, once again, hit the nail right on the head. I never understood why city council members, county commissioners, elected officials at North Carolina, why don't they ever ask the city manager, the county manager, when's the last time you actually sat in the airport? I mean, we ask these questions in the private sector. We expect our leads of organizations to actually be where your customer is. When's the last time you rode a bus? When's the last time you went to Manolo's Bakery? When's the last time you did these things? We never, it's almost like we expect them to work 9 to 5 only. These people are being paid over $100,000, $150,000 a year. I expect you to work on Saturday nights, on Sunday nights, on Sunday mornings. So I appreciate when we have a city council member like Braxton Winston, or someone who actually asks these questions, and then everyone else like clutches their pearls. I'm like, no. Anyway,
I will say that, and this is in reference to Michael, in my time working with chambers and with the Charlotte Chamber and other organizations over the past 15 years, we've had different leaderships and different groups come in and out. And I will say there has been more intentionality by the SBA to reach Black and brown and women owned and veteran owned. And there's been more intentionality surrounding that, even under the previous administration. You know, to me, it's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's an American issue. We need to focus on small businesses. If small businesses in the Charlotte region employ 41% of our eligible workforce, that makes them the single largest employer in the city and the region. And if that's the case, then their voice should be louder than Wells Fargo, and their voice should be louder than any of the others, because most of our individuals are working in service jobs and in retail jobs and food service jobs. And we need to ensure that we are reaching the corridors and we're reaching the least of our businesses to ensure that we're building them up. Because if we have a strong small business base and they're employing 41%, then Charlotte is going to become the brightest star in the state, the brightest star in the region, the brightest star in the United States. And so I'll pivot, I'll bounce this back over to Michael, but the SBA has done a great job over the past few years, especially under Michael's leadership, to ensure that we're reaching out and we're doing things specifically geared towards Black, brown, women, veteran, and minority-owned businesses.
Yeah, thank you, Chad, for that acknowledgement. One of the things that I've tried to sort of make very clear in presentations or discussions like this is, obviously the experience of the last several months dramatized some very real disparities and a lack of equity in terms of accessing capital and other things. And my mission with the SBA is to see what I can do about inserting the SBA into conversations about upward mobility and economic empowerment, so that we can better serve, particularly our Black and brown communities that, for historical reasons, have been unable to access some of these programs and have been unable to transfer generational wealth from one generation to the next. So yeah, we're being very intentional about it here at the SBA. I do want to say a couple of words, though, about a couple of quick things, real quick. And that is, when Chad was mentioning, hey, a lot of times we had to figure out for ourselves at a grassroots level, how do some of these programs work? I saw a lot of that. And it was really kind of inspiring to see these things kind of germinate at the ground level. Jose Alvarez, my good friend Jose at Prospera, was able to increase the number of PPP loans to his Hispanic clientele from 6 PPP loans last year to like 40 PPP loans, during round 2. So that was a very inspiring grassroots effort. I know a small business owner up in Greensboro who manufactures hair products for the African-American community. She has a nationwide network of buyers. These are salon owners, like single owners of salons and barbers and just single stall owners. And she, through her own kind of initiative, was hosting programs and webinars in terms of how to put the paperwork together, how to do an application for PPP and EIDL. And then, she called SBA and it's like, wow, you guys really, you don't need our help, Taylor, because you already know how these things work, but we were happy to join them. And so we're seeing and hearing of stories like this at the ground level in terms of people just kind of getting together and doing for themselves to get the assistance. That said, we mobilized our entire army of service providers at SBTDC, SCORE, Women's Business Centers, and Veterans Business Outreach Center, because there's only 12 of us. So we have been mobilizing them, and those folks are the army that can seek out for assistance the next time this happens. Hopefully it won't, but the next time it happens, we'll be ready, I think.
A couple things. One, the show had a lot of momentum. All three of y'all have made some extremely good points and a lot of insight. We may go over just a touch. If anybody has to leave at 11 o'clock, obviously, just wave and check out. Any of y'all that want to stay over, we're gonna expand a little bit onto the post-COVID world and possibly the Roaring 20s if we can get time to it. But one thing is, each of your entities, what do you look forward to in the post-COVID world? And do you think we've seen explosive growth this year. I believe the GDP is on pace to grow about 7%, according to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. do you think we're seeing the beginning of an explosive American boom similar to the 1920s?
I can just share because I gotta leave.
Okay.
But I just wanna share something big that I'm working on, and I think every single of you in this conversation can help me, and because I don't wanna do it myself. It's very heartbroken for me when I drive through America and I go through these towns that are becoming like ghost towns. When you go to the main streets and see that there is no business there, then starting this coming year, I'm gonna start choosing towns in North Carolina, and I'm gonna go to the main streets of these towns, and I'm gonna start opening like ice cream shops and bakeries on purpose. So these are small towns that everybody's living, that nobody's paying attention, that big corporations they're not interested to start business there. I'm gonna go myself, intentional. And I'm gonna do it with the mayor, with the city council, with the city leaders, with the community, and with all of you, because this is a huge help that I can get from SBA, a huge help that I can get from the chambers, and I want for you guys to help me to share this message, man. It's not gonna be the fastest way for me to be rich, but it's the fastest way for me to be in peace of mind, and the fastest way to start creating a big America, a new America, and create change. So I invite you to be part of this movement, and I want to be, to say thank you to all of you. Like I say, SBA has been a bless for me, from mentally, from training, for I got the loans with the support through the pandemic. Jose, I'm gonna be with Jose Alvarez in Wilmington. We are gonna be talking with the mayor and with city council and showing this new project that I have. I get a lot of help from SBTC at the university, and big fans with the chambers. The Latin America Chamber of Commerce has been an angel to me, and they have been my mentor since I came here. But just say thank you so much. And remember, I'm not spoken, but always talking with my heart for a better future, for a better America, and to be proactive, not always against to fight, to divide, just be together on all of this.
Wonderful. Excellent.
So the Carolinas LGBT Chamber has seen explosive growth over the past 12 months. But one of the things that we are being intentional about is ensuring that our small businesses have the tools in the toolbox and that we're connecting them. Chambers should not function as just social outlets. They should be connectors. A Chamber of Commerce should connect and empower their members to be able to have access to things like the SBA, to their local hubs and business inclusion networks. And so, if you're not a member of one of your local chambers, whether it's the Latin American Chamber of Commerce of Charlotte, the Carolinas Asian American Chamber, or the Women's Business Center, or any of these organizations, the Mecklenburg County, the Charlotte Mecklenburg Black Chamber, join one of them. You don't necessarily have to fit into the demographic of the chamber to be in the network of the chamber. And it's extremely important to have that network of individuals to help support you, as well as the educational tools, the connecting tools, things of that nature. And the LGBT Chamber, I'll toot our horn for just a second. The LGBT Chamber is extremely proud of our diversity. More than 54% of our membership are women. Of that, we have almost 41% of our chamber is Black and brown, 32% of our chamber is straight ally. And then we also have an amazing 8.2% of our chamber is veteran owned. And that's an amazing number. And it's mostly lesbian veteran owned businesses that have popped up all across Western North Carolina. And we're excited to work with them and help them navigate, because we don't just silo ourselves into LGBTQ things. We teach them about women's certification, veteran certification, how to access all the tools in the toolbox. We're just a conduit to be able to get them to that point. And if you're interested in joining the chamber, our website is clgbtcc.org. You can join today. Thanks.
Yeah, and then as far as this idea of, are we heading into a roaring 20s kind of situation? I think it might be a little bit premature to talk about that just now, but I will tell you there is an enormous degree of pent-up demand. There's just lots of money out there that has been saved by folks who are no longer commuting, who are no longer, paying their dry cleaning bills on a regular basis. And so folks have been able to say they're no longer going out. They haven't been able to go out and eat. So they've been eating in and preparing their own meals. Not surprisingly, towards last year, the end of last year, we saw that a lot of hardware companies, Lowe's, Home Depot, had run out of lumber because people were using their money that they saved up to add expansions, add a patio, add that sort of thing to their home. So there's just an enormous amount of pent-up demand there. The number one problem that we are hearing from small businesses is that they cannot hire enough people back, to staff these restaurants or retail businesses. That is the number one problem. I'm not quite sure what the solution is to that, but and there are a bunch of different theories out there as to why that might be. But I think if that persists, then that is going to continue to impede our ability as a community to recover. Kristen, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say we have come up with solutions on this show, Medicare for all, so that way the small business person doesn't have the burden of having to apply benefits. Like Manolo doesn't have to apply insurance where maybe Harris Teeter can, so he can attract that person. That person doesn't have to anyway. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Sure. Yeah. So there's two things. One is the difficulty in hiring labor or hiring back labor on the part of small businesses. The other big thing that we're seeing is the supply chain. Because as a result of COVID shutdowns, as a result of COVID-related illnesses, for starters, there's not a whole lot of people, or there aren't as many people at the docks that can unload all of these cargo ships and that sort of thing with all of this inventory that retailers, for example, are wanting to put back on their shelves. I saw a news clip the other day that there are boats stuck out in New York Harbor off the port of Los Angeles, and they're just sitting there because there's not enough people to help unload them. There was that same clip showed a toy store owner who said, yeah, you see this toy that we have here? If you really want to buy this for little Johnny or Jenny at Christmas time, you should buy it now because there's no guarantee you're going to find a replacement anytime soon. So lack of available labor and the pool of talent to bring back into your store, also the supply chain, which has been seriously hampered. Those are the two big things that I think are impeding any sort of roaring 20s type of thing that we've seen written about.
Excellent.
Well, thank you, Chad, for being on. I know Chad has to depart right now. I have a couple comments about, employees. For one, we have 11 million people in undocumented purgatory that should be citizens. That's 11 million people that are sitting here in this country that we should just boom. That would change and create a dynamic that so many other countries that are low birth rate countries like the United States, Canada, tripled their citizenship entry because of the same situation we're in. We also have millions of people with long COVID that had to exit the workforce or have to do something different than before because of their injuries. So our roaring 20s might be hampered by some of our decisions on policy levels on the national level, and or quite frankly, the pandemic. The pandemic is created a tremendous amount of death, a tremendous amount of injury. We officially hit the 700,000 mark on mortality this week. And so that all came out of our economy. That all changed our lives and the lives around those 700,000 people that died. So I think you are right, Mike, that we are pivoting in a situation that we have a loss of life that is similar to what you would see in a world war or a civil war. We have tens of millions of people that are still fighting COVID related injuries. And at the same time, we also have this pent up demand.
Mhm.
People want to be social. They want to go out. They want to go to bakeries. They want to buy stuff. They want to do the things they did before. And so I think it's going to be a strange dance, almost like a, you know, over the next few years. I am excited about the 20s again, and I hope we see some good sense legislation and some good sense things by our different levels of government to help us navigate this and help organizations like the SBA, the Chamber, and small businesses actually survive all this. And Manolo also had to go too.
Yeah, it looks like we need
we're
to
probably
wrap
bumping
up
up to his lunch hour.
Yeah,
I imagine they get a rush.
Yeah, we need to wrap up. So let's go around the Brady. Sorry to interrupt you, Jenny. Let's go around the Brady Bunch screen and tell us where you're going to be in the next week or so, or any important information you need so we can end the show. I guess we'll start with you, Jenny, then we'll go with you, Michael, and then Manolo had to drop out. He actually has to do some things, and Chad had a hard stop, so he had to stop as well. So Jenny, you want to go ahead?
Well, I did my big thing last night. We went in front of the Mecklenburg County Board of Commissioners and pitched the non-discrimination ordinance, which did pass. It passed in a unanimous fashion. So I am grateful to the entire Board of Commissioners for doing the right thing and protecting LGBT citizens, veterans, pregnant people, and people with natural hair. They basically mirrored the NDO that passed on August 9th that the Charlotte City Council passed as well, unanimously across party lines. So a big thank you to the Board of County Commissioners for doing that for all of Mecklenburg County.
Okay, great. And then for my part, two things to sort of impart, and that is, for all of this talk about, potential for another roaring 20s kind of situation, we're not going to get past this unless we get as many of our friends and family members vaccinated as quickly as possible. Amen. The White House put out a website, vaccines.gov, where if you own a small business, if you are part of a church or other faith-based organization, if you are involved with a community center, you can actually connect with a vaccine provider and have them do vaccinations on site. Go to vaccines.gov to find the provider near you. It could be CVS, could be Walgreens, could be any of those, but connect with them and they can come on site and bring the vaccinations to you, because very often employees can't leave, or employers can't let their employees leave because they need them on site. So that would be a good program to take advantage of. The second thing I wanted to say is that although most of our COVID relief programs are gone, there's still one that is still very active. And I want to let folks know that they can still apply for a direct SBA COVID relief loan called EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. You can apply for up to $2 million, provided your financials show that economic injury is justified. You can take 30 years to repay the loan at very low rates of interest, 3.75 if you're a profit-making venture. And here's the thing, your payments are deferred for the first 2 years. So you don't even have to worry about making a payment. If you got your loan today, you can start making payments 2 years from now. So very, very good benefits for small businesses and qualified nonprofits of all kinds. To apply, you can go to sba.gov/EIDL. If you need some help, give us a call and find either SBA or one of our partners at sba.gov/NC. We'd be happy to help you and get the funding that you need. That's up until December 31st. Up until December 31st, or while funds are still available. So you should apply fairly quickly.
And hopefully we can put some of the link on our show page. That way, at the end of the show, people can click onto the links to the SBA and to the Chamber. Y'all both do wonderful work and have helped a lot of businesses in the pandemic. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Manolo.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I hopefully will be back in Texas. I'll be back in Charlotte, North Carolina this time next week. So next week's show, just want to remind you, next week we will be talking about, was Columbus a hero or a villain? The week after, has the real South risen? And now the culture war is really won. And the last show of the October is what's an advocate versus an activist. Listen to what we've had, what everyone has said. My fear is the Roaring Twenties is going to come back, but it's going to be more of a class Roaring Twenties. Those who can actually afford, who have health care, who have all of these things, who have disposable income, are going to enjoy the recovery. And those who maybe have healthcare issues or whatever are going to be, so I think it's going to come back, but my fear is it's going to be the haves and the have-nots on who enjoys it. So I don't know what we need to do to, anyway, so that's kind of my 2 cents. Anything else, Jen, before we close up? Oh, real quickly, because I had this question, I know Jenny wanted to ask this. Mike, I know that there's some people who have said, like it's taken them longer to get money from the SBA, whether that like for these PPE things or whatever, rather than, let's say, last year. Is there a slowdown going on, or what's happening? I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah. What we saw towards the end of last year is that the SBA's Office of Inspector General took a look at our processes for doing PPP and now the EIDL program, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And their mandate was very clear. SBA, you need to institute stronger controls guarding against fraud. And they said, we need you to institute those controls at the front end. So stop fraud from happening, because if it's at the back end and the money's already out, it's going to be a lot harder for SBA, for law enforcement to collect. So we had to implement a lot stronger controls to guard against prevention. That means, we're comparing this year's application with information that may have been submitted last year, tapping into databases of all kinds to see is this person in fact a living person? Is this person attempting to commit fraud by suspicious online behavior? It's because of that it's gotten a little bit slower this year to get EIDL loans, as an example, than it was last year. And I agree with that, because this is your money as taxpayers. Rule number one has 2 parts: help our small businesses survive, but also protect the interests of the taxpayers at any cost.
Excellent. Thank you. Because I know we've heard for some people that it's not really a change in administration. It's more of safety guards to protect our money, as you mentioned. So with that said, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very informative. Those who are going to watch us later on Facebook and also on YouTube, thank you so much for your time. We do value your time. We will see you next week. Mike, if you can stay on, if you don't mind, on Zoom, because if we can do a little promo so we can promote the show. Otherwise, we'll see you next week on Coffee and Pan Dulce. Bye, y'all. Act like there's music, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
All right.